Are you ready, Carrie? Okay. Let's call the meeting to order. First item, please. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Next item is report of Deputy City Manager regarding the 2009 second trimester report, and the staff recommendation is that the committee receive the report of the Deputy City Manager entitled 2009 second trimester report for information. Second.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. I have some questions to ask on this one. The vacancy rate of 53 employees that we have not filled for all of 2009, and if it was at $60,000 per employee, it would be over $3 million. Then I noticed that our police are a vacancy rate of 5%. I think a budget of what, $20 million is not $1 million. And also on page 4, it says here, the slowdown came into a slowdown and a strong financial position. Well, I'm concerned that although we may be in a good financial position, but the fact is that, you know what, we may be in a worse financial position as a result of the slowdown because we have not adjusted that much. But I've got a few more questions I want to ask, Mr. Chair.
Would you like an answer to the first couple?
Pardon?
Would you like an answer to the first couple, Mr. Skor?
Yes.
Okay. Who will be answering those questions? Mr. Dumont?
Thank you very much. Yes, in terms of the vacancies, there are 53 vacancies at the end of the second trimester, of which 23 of those positions were backfilled, so there's actually 30 vacancies. You can't just take that number by the annual salary, though, because positions are open for various periods of time, so some may be vacant for a month, others may be vacant for 3 months or 6 months, or perhaps even the entire year. In terms of the police vacancies, as Council knows, we don't fund IHIT directly, and we assume a certain number of vacancies in order to cover the cost of IHIT. Right now, there's currently 6 police positions vacant, and that roughly covers the $900,000 annual cost of IHIT.
Thank you.
Well, see, and that is very troublesome to me. The fact is, IHIT seems to be coming up every year that we're not funding it. We're looking for surpluses or whatever to fund it. I don't know why it's not in our budget to be funded. And then we don't have to use these excuses that something has to happen. You know, if there was no surplus, you know, in the police budget, we'd be in serious trouble. Now, there's also 3 policemen that we hired that we still don't have them. We hired them in December. We paid for them about $300,000. So we may not be able, may not even be using about maybe $50,000 of that budget this year. So there's $300,000. So when I'm saying that, you know, Mr. Chair, when times are tough, we need to look and scramble for every buck. And that's what we have to do. And when the personnel manager gave us the vacancy rate, there's certainly not 23 that have been filled. There's 50 vacancies. And some of them showed that they will not be filled. They're starting in the latter part of 2010. All that's in this year's budget. If they're not going to be filled, there'll be a percentage of that money is going to be in this year's budget that's not being used. So I think we need to be very prudent and adjust that for the taxpayers. So not hit for another 6. I noticed that we're cutting a lot of services to the public, which really is troublesome to me when all these things are aboard and we can have it not hit the taxpayers by adjusting some of these things, but we have not adjusted it. So, you know, also I noticed that in a survey it says that 90% of the people are happy, if so read again, are happy with the RCP. Well, I'd suggest that, you know, There's a lot of people very unhappy, not because of the personnel department, the personnel. We have very good men and women that are serving our community, but it's the leadership that they're getting. The things that they're doing is they're not accommodating the city like they should be accommodating anymore, not like a city police force. So I think that, maybe later on, budget debates, maybe I'll make a motion that we see if we can possibly go into our own police force, city police force. I know it's going to cost more money, but probably be a lot more pleasing to the taxpayers of this community. Now, there's some questions I want to ask here. I've got them marked out, so bear with me. I'm just going through these. Okay, under the $100,000 contracts that we have. Corporate services look like we're down by $2,160,900, and also planning development by over $1 million. And of course, the police, we saved on the police budget by $1,169,000. So it's more to look after the high hit, plus to have maybe $100,000. And if you take the money from the police force that we are not getting not spending the $300,000, there's certainly more than $300,000 to be absorbed there that can be looked in. I noticed that also our legal department.
Councilor Score, do you have questions specifically?
Yeah, also I might as well do the other one. The legal department is $175,500 more, and I'm just beginning to wonder, as this is probably an awful lot of battles that we're having with lands and bridges and a few other things. Is that a fact, or what is happening that all of a sudden we're way over on our legal department, and also on the others?
Through to staff, Mr. Dumont.
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Sikora was referring to attachment B, which is the second trimester financial summary. Corporate services shows $2.16 million shortfall, and that's related to our decline in revenue, the $5 million revenue hole we've been talking to council about, and similarly the planning budget is short about $1 million due to their decrease in development revenue, and that ties back to the discussion around the staffing and us managing our staffing and keeping a certain number of positions open in order to offset the revenue shortfall. And at this point in time, at the end of the second trimester, we're pretty much tracking right on where we need to be, within about $250,000 in terms of balancing those two things.
And that shortfall of millions of dollars, I mean, how, when you're running a business starts losing some odd millions of dollars, so you start adjusting. But we look like we haven't adjusted that department whatsoever. We still have the same manpower, we have the same of everything else, but we're down in revenue. And that's what's frightening to me, is the fact is that there hasn't been an adjustment.
Through Mr. Dumont, has there been?
Thank you very much. Yes, we did adjust that department in terms of positions. When we were in the construction boom, we had brought on a number of temporary staff in order to deal with the peak demand we were having at that time. Those temporaries were subsequently laid off when we experienced the downturn, and we've also been keeping some positions open in order to balance the revenue hole, but it's not something that planning can do all on their own because they're a large revenue source and they have a relatively small department. So we're spreading the expenditure cuts around, but we are dealing with the problem.
Thank you. Also, the problem that that not only that we've are down in planning development of $1 million, but also when we can start moving things up, they're not moving up. For instance, building permits in this city, 8 weeks to get a building permit to build a house. 8 weeks. Now that's not acceptable to me, not whatsoever. And I'm wondering why we have to live with something like this, and it's been constant that way. It hasn't improved since the beginning of the year. It just has been constant, because I get calls from people that are telling me that are 8 weeks for a building permit. And it really, what it means is the fact is that the banks gain money. You pay 2 months of mortgages on your house that you haven't even started building, which is not a good idea. But I'd like to see that this thing is moved up to 3 weeks and remain that way. And if it isn't 3 weeks, we should be notified about that.
I think we'll get Mr. McIntyre. That's also a staffing issue too. Mr. McIntyre, do you have any comment on Mr. Sikora's question, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Currently, single-family building permit applications have crept back up. That is correct. Earlier in the summer, we too were experiencing a bit of a backlog, and a combination of factors. As John mentioned, a number of staff, I think it was up to 7, the temporary staff within the department, those positions were not renewed. Another 4 or 5 vacant positions were not filled to affect cost savings. In the summer months, this all combined for the perfect storm because we had people away on vacation. The good news was there was an uptick in the local construction industry, a lot of interest in building homes, and so the number of applications we received just kind of overwhelmed the system and the resources we had. We responded to that. We brought in some additional part-time staff. We rejigged things in the building permits division, and we got the permit numbers down to the 2 to 3 week target we had set. I'm told now that just this past week, a number of applications have come in. We're talking about groups of applications, 5, 9, 10 applications in a group coming in at one time, and we are backlogged again, and so we are going to be looking at putting some measures in place to deal with that backlog.
Okay.
Dumont, 1 second, Mr. Dumont.
Yeah, if I could just add one comment. When we experienced the upturn, and it was fairly significant in August, Jim did come and talk to me, and we brought in additional help. If the permits are coming in, then our revenue's coming in, and we can afford to bring in the additional resources. So we'll continue to adjust as the market adjusts and try to respond and be responsive to the development community.
Thank you, Mr. Dumont. Mr. Sikora. Councillor Sikora, are you finished?
Yeah, no, there was the manager wanted to say something.
Pete?
I just wanted to highlight one additional aspect to this. Both Jim and John have highlighted the day-to-day issues and how we're managing that. In addition to this, I have just had some discussions with Jim and Peter Kirshner of that area about the need to fundamentally look at how they're organized. And when we get to the review of the cyclical reviews, I believe those reviews are going quite well. So, and this year we'll be giving an update at the end of the year, and it's actually going to be as part of the overall budget package. And then looking forward to next year, we are recommending we continue that process, and that permits, the whole building permits area will be one of the areas we fundamentally look at in terms of how they're staffed, how they're structured, how the different people in that area relate to each other, and those kind of things. So that will be a recommendation coming forward to this council in terms of whether or not they want to fundamentally look in a more closer way at that area. That will be what the administration's recommendation
and I noticed that 8 weeks has not been a come and go and dropped to 3 weeks and then increased to 8 weeks. It's been 6 to 8 weeks constantly, whole year round. It has not improved. So that's what I'm saying, that, you know, you've now got a whole bunch of building permits. It'll probably go down to 12 weeks then. You know, those are things that I'm concerned about. So, you know, I hope that a month from now, 2 months from now, I don't get a call saying, well, the building permits are another 8 weeks or 12 weeks. But anyways, the Deputy City Manager, Legal Department, $179,000 over in their budget.
Mr. Dumont.
Thank you very much. That's in the Human Resources area. We had the discussion about this with Council last year, that Human Resources for a period of time has been what I would consider to be structurally underfunded. They have trimmed their costs. I believe last year they were overspent by approximately $300,000, and we're trying to cut that in half this year, and we're trying to work towards where we can balance the budget. Legal costs have gone up this year, and that's related to a number of grievances that came from QP National, and there was some arbitrations involved and a need to resolve those. I believe that most of those have been cleared up now, but there was a spike in legal costs this year.
Okay, thank you. And under waste, $37,000, and it says increased bank charges for cards payments. What is that? What is it?
Sheena?
Through the chair, that is for the merchant fees related to people paying online with their credit cards. So when people pay and they use certain cards, we get charged a merchant fee. It's actually a good thing. It means that people are paying by their card and they're paying online, and we're moving things through a little quickly.
Okay, now I'm almost nearing to where I should probably leave it go, but under contracts of $100,000 and over, they're listed here, and there's quite a few of them. There's probably about 20 odd, and most of them are with sports center facilities. I thought we had a budget of $62 million, and it dropped to $57 million for sports. Okay, the arena and the curling rink and everything else. Are these figures on top of that $57 million, or is that included in the $57 million? And if it's included in the $57 million, why is it here? The contractor's got that package, and he's gone out to contract, and we shouldn't even be seeing this. Or is there something different?
Through the chair, these contracts are part of the $57 million as part of our revised purchasing policy a number of years ago. Some of the approvals don't come forward to council, and so everything that is over $100,000 is reported to council on a trimester basis. This is just that reporting. It's just to tell you these are the contracts that we've let in accordance with our purchasing policy during the period of time. It's just for information only, and it's definitely part of the $57 million.
So if this is part of $57 million, there should be maybe 10 or 20 sheets of these papers to tell me what the $57 million consists of. Because there'd be wooden construction, there'd be over 100,000, there'd be many things over 100,000. That we should have a much completed package. That's what I'm saying. This, when you look at this, it seems like this is above the 57 million, but it's not. It's included.
These are just the contracts that have been let in this trimester period. If you pulled all of the contracts for the project over the 3-year period, it would be considerably bigger, and it would total up to the $57 million.
Okay, and then I did talk to Mr. Zuzak this afternoon, but on the garbage, we're $1.418 million for garbage from July till now, or till December, I guess. But also, there's $175,000 Fraser Richmond Soil Fiber Limited for $175,000 for tipping and processing. I thought that our garbage was already all in. The tipping and processing was all in that bed with Smith-Wright.
Through Mr. Suzak or Mr. Dumont?
I believe that would be the yard waste disposal facility in Richmond. Our yard waste would go there for processing.
Thank you.
So the Smith-Wright picks up all the waste and everything else, and if they went to the landfill site and dumped at the landfill site, the tipping fee's already in there, right? And now we're paying another $175 somehow separate.
Right. Mr. Suzak.
Sure, Mr. Chair. Broadly speaking, the solid waste charges are divided in two broad groups. One is the price to collect the material, and that is the Smith-Wright contract. And that comes in just in excess of $5 million annually. And then tipping charges are on top of that. I suspect that this is likely related to the tipping charges for processing at the Fraser Richmond facility. Just for a bit of further detailed information, next year the general tipping fee at the Waste Tech plant for general solid waste will be about $82 per ton. That will be an increase from a current fee of $71. However, the organic material tipping fee is substantially lower than that. It's $49, and that is what is motivating us to have the pilot project for the food scraps. So we'll be coming back at the end of that pilot project to discuss all of those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Suzak.
And on the last page here, there's 20 employees that says on hold, vacant until 2010. We don't know when it's going to be filled in 2010, but those employees were in there for 2009 too. So, you know, it was in 2009's budget also. So there's the dilemma. And then when we'll go to a meeting after, we'll be seeing all kinds of cuts to the customers in this city that I'm totally opposed to, because there's no need of it. All we're doing is hurting the politicians with these cuts, and still the people, they're not going to be hired to 2010, and who knows when 2010, maybe not even in 2010. And yet there's 20 employees, and if you take it $60,000 each, that's some 1 point some odd million, 2 some odd million. That's in this year's budget. That, you know, why is it there? Why can't it be partially there? Or why can't we make up our minds when we're going to hire these people and have that limited amount of money in there? So, you know, when the times are good, I can see something like this happening. But the times are tough. It's hard out there, and we're going to be upping this budget and cutting the services. And I can't support anything like that, especially we can find money elsewhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Skor. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. First of all, kudos to staff for including a couple of pages of performance indicators. We're getting there, and I think that needs to be acknowledged. I just have a couple of comments about performance indicators and what's called supporting statistics. Personally, I would find it really helpful if there were sort of 3 years, if we have the data to compare year after year. Just reporting data for this year doesn't let us know if we're getting closer or further from our goals. So in the future, if we have the data that will allow some sort of comparison, it would certainly help me. Other comments that I have, I've met with Ms. Santarosa and Mr. Dumont and gone through in detail some of the concerns I have. There's just one that I just want to flag, and it's the performance indicators sheet, and it talks about officer per population ratio. And I don't think that's a really good outcome indicator. If our goal is to strengthen neighborhoods, just because you have more police officers doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have lower crime rate. Because you could have fewer police officers and have lower crime rate for a variety of other reasons. So my suggestion is actually to not use that as an indicator, but rather the crime rate, because ultimately that's what we want, or perception of crime. Because earlier in this report, it says that our crime rates are actually down, which is great. We're doing things right. But I'm not sure if people's perception of crime has gone up. So there's something that's not sitting right. So I'm not convinced that a cop to pop is a good indicator. There were a couple of others. Just in relation to what Councillor Sikora was saying regarding amount of time it takes to actually get permits. I think that's actually one of the indicators that we ought to be really paying attention to. It's not the number of development permits. Technically that's an output, and that's good. The more permits, the more development's going on, that's all good. But it's really the time it takes from when the paperwork is dropped off to when we actually give them the permit that we want to be measuring when we take a look at, I forget what the goal is, excellence in city governance. So if we can, over a trimester, hold steady at 3 weeks, if that's the indicator, if that's the goal, then we get to pat ourselves on the back that we've done a really good job, we have things in place. But if it slips to 8 weeks, like Councillor Sikora suggested, then there's something that we ought to be paying attention to, because that's not achieving excellence. And so those are the kinds of things I think we ought to be paying attention to. Same thing with complaints, lodging the number of complaints. In my short tenure as city council, I think people are always going to complain, a certain sector. For me, what's important in terms of achieving excellence is how long does it take from when they complain to when we resolve the complaint. So if, 1 year it takes, 12 working days, and then in year 2 we're down to 8 working days, then we say, well, what we're doing is we're doing something well. We have enough staff in place, we're responding quickly. Those are the kinds of things that I think we ought to be paying attention to. I have more notes, and I'm going to pass them on to Ms. Santarosa. But I think that's yeah. But I just want to sort of say thank you very much for including this in the trimester report. I think it's the perfect place, and I look forward to the next trimester. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reid?
Thank you. Just to comment on one thing Councillor Robinson said about the time it takes to do things. I agree with her, and it's great to have all these fancy little charts and that, but maybe we all need to have an attitude adjustment. And I think staff needs to know that when people come in and the city comes in, it's really important to developers and people that they borrowed this money to do these things. And the longer it takes, the longer they're paying interest on it. And frankly, it isn't fair, but sometimes I don't think that everybody realizes that. I'll go quickly through mine. On the A priorities, we're taking kudos for some of the things that have happened here. Do we actively go out? Anyone in this city actively go out and pursue major community events and festivals? I hear in the sports world, I hear Doug mentioning there's, soccer this or whatever somewhere else. I mean, we have anything that we have the facilities for, do we actively pursue? Hockey, I know we're actively pursuing that, and I kudos to Leisure and Parks for that. But hopefully some of our staff in here are not just reporting what's happening, but that we're actively pursuing it. That's just a comment, and I filled out the ones I had. The Integrated Economic Plan. The June, I don't remember supporting our participation in a commerce thing, which is a economic development action by 8 memories. I have a vague flash before my eyes. Will we be getting a report through land use soon on that?
Through the chair, that's correct. The question was raised last week at the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee about an annual report, and thereafter what we're intending to do is to combine an economic action and development plan report along with the trimester report, so you'll be able to better see how.
I want that specific one. Thank you. And 14 new businesses in Millardville. Is that something we're reporting, or is it something that we actually pursued as a city to bring people into the city?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe that was something that, it may have been a result of some pursuing that we have done. It could be a combination of this new businesses setting up. We haven't recorded specifically how those new businesses came to be in Coquitlam. We don't have that information, but it's something that we could look at for future reporting.
Okay, when we go down the economic development road, measurables are going to be stuff that we've actively pursued, a tournament that we've actively pursued and got, or something like that. Same goes for business. Number 26, the B priorities, of course it's down there. If there was a Z, I'm sure it would be there. Strategic partnerships with other municipalities and agencies. I hope to see Riverview on that, being that it is probably the largest tract of land in our city that we could have some huge economic spin-off from. I don't see it anywhere in here. Graffiti education, probably through to the RCMP. One time I had asked a question about, apparently you can identify some of these little guys because of the color they use or what graffiti they're putting on. Are we ever going to be able to have a chargeback program on this to the parents?
Through to Mr. Wilcock.
Bet you didn't think that was coming, did you?
I think there are ways to go through the courts. for that sort of activity in restorative justice and within the court system. Those are sanctions we can ask for.
Would that be the only way, Claude, or could we bring them somehow through this ticketing process we have with the adjudicator right here so that it gets done quickly? Like the kids are brought forward, it may not scare the heck out of them, but if they come in really quickly with even if it was a $50 fine or something and they had to appear here with their parents, I don't know if that would be a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I'm not sure on the ability to make a bylaw or to ticket when there's already existing legislation for it. So I think that's something that lawyers would need to discuss further on that one.
Thanks very much. And I'll ask Mr. Stellan if you can just nose around at that one a bit, because I'm wondering if we can help the RCMP not deal with a bunch of little diddly stuff. Thank you very much. Oh, no, I can't say thank you very much. I had one more. Tried to do this. Deputy City Manager, what is the unfunded wellness and disability program?
Thank you very much. HR is conducting some limited wellness program stuff, but they don't really have a budget for that, but we feel it's important.
Like, give me an example of one.
Ron's here.
For the wellness program, it would be something like Know Your Numbers, where we have staff come in and get their blood pressure taken and that sort of thing. And we have speakers come in and talk about proper diet and smoking cessation and all kinds of different wellness topics that I think are really quite useful to the staff and helpful.
I do too.
They're well received. A lot of people are doing Know Your Numbers. We bring in yoga and various exercise programs as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks. I'm done.
Okay. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I just have 3 questions. One relates to our A priorities and the mountain bike adventure park and skill park. Design process has been deferred. Just wondering what that is, where it is, and why this was deferred.
Through to Ms. McKay.
The location is in the Town Centre Park. It's been deferred. It's just a workload capacity issue that because of the restraint that we've been showing this year, we've had to focus on holding back on some of our vacancies, and so we're just managing the workload. So you may be aware that there is an informal area where there is some mountain bike activity happening. That continues to happen. Youth are continuing to use that, but we've not advanced on the development plans.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to see with most of the A and B priorities the great progress that we've made. I was looking through the C priorities and wondering how many of them and how we're doing with the C priorities, and specifically I asked that question because of the Coquitlam River entry here, and I attended on the weekend the watershed planning strategy project, phase 3 this will be, and so it seems to be right on track, and I'm just wondering about the rest of it.
Through to...
Thank you very much. We don't have the data on the C priorities with us today, but we do plan on reporting out on the C priorities as well as part of our year-end report.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's great. And my last question has to do with performance indicators, and I agreed with everything Councillor Robinson said about this. One of the statistics that I would like to see with respect to expanding local jobs, local prosperity, and maybe it also fits into the category of sustainability as well, is the percentage of people living and working in the city. Here you've identified the number of local jobs, but I'd like to know how many people are actually working and living in the city. I think that's for sustainability purposes, I think that's a very important statistic. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Reamer beat me to the punch on a couple of things I was going to ask about. But further along the lines of that, the bike park there, when's it been deferred to, and how much money are we talking about? Sorry. Yeah.
I apologize, I don't have detailed information for this meeting, but I would be happy to provide council with an update.
Okay, thank you. The next thing here is again about the that note that was in there about 14 new businesses in Millardville. And it made me realize that we don't get that kind of information on, when I look, that's interesting to me. We've got 14 new businesses. Is that a net gain, or is that, or if they're just coming in when others have left? And also, I would like us to be able to, and I don't think we do this now, I would like us to be able to follow up with these businesses and ask them why they moved here, and was their experience with City Hall satisfactory, those kinds of things. I'd like to see that become part of our customer strategy. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could on that point.
Mr. McIntyre?
Thanks, Councillor McDonnell, for raising that. We are looking at that. In fact, we are moving forward with that. This is something from the Mayor's office. We do have some pretty good data with our business license applications. But to this point, we haven't really drilled into it and really, sort of categorized it or really analyzed what's there. And by what I mean is a number of things. Are these new applications, as you refer to, are they net, or are these simply just renewals? Are these people moving from one location to another location? So there's, and some of that requires follow-up with the applicant. So that's one of the tasks for our new economic development manager, is drilling into that area, and through that, getting to know the businesses and providing that feedback loop that Mayor Stewart's been asking for. And to ask those questions. Have you dealt with the City of Coquitlam? What was your experience? Give us your honest feedback. And also just to know a little bit more about their businesses, so we have a better sense of who they are out there. So this is an area that we're developing, and we hope to be able to have better data in time around that. But it just takes a little bit to start pulling that out.
Good, thank you.
Well, I'm quite happy with the where we're going on this. We didn't have this type of information before, A, B, or C, to track what was going on. And I think council given staff some direction on some refinements to this. I think we're moving in a very good direction on indicators and where we as council can see how things are moving along. I thought Councillor Robinson was going to bring up one other item, and maybe she has. It was in regards to business license. We talked about how many have been issued and how many renewals, but what is that year over year? Are we up? Are we down? Where are we going? So that type of information also within the business licenses, so, and then even after a 5-year period, so year after year, and then have it broken over a 5-year period to see where we're at and how we're managing. And if we're going down, why? If we're going up, why? But those are just my comments. Seeing no other speakers?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, Mayor Stewart.
Sorry about that. I'm clicking the button late. I do want to actually echo Councillor Robinson's comments about kudos. There's some data here that I think is important. We're beginning down a path of providing more information, and I appreciate that. One of the things we are doing, and I thank Mr. McIntyre for pointing that out, that we do want to find out more about the businesses that move here, and the businesses that don't, the businesses that come to the counter and for some reason get scared away or get to choose someplace else to live. And I want to find out who those businesses are and what we could do better in the capacity of continually improving our processes. There's a good amount of information in here, and of course we get conflicting comments from councillors. We've got council members that want us to cut more staff or to hire staff more quickly or to shorten wait times, all at the same department, and I understand that each one of those is mutually exclusive and they're not complementary suggestions from us. but I certainly appreciate the amount of information, the amount of effort that's gone into this report, and the continued work here. I agree, though, with those that say it's not inputs that we should be measuring. The COP-to-POP isn't as relevant as the people's perception of safety on the streets and the actual crime rate reductions. Those are outcomes. We do want to measure what we put into it, but we want to compare what we get out of it and what those results are, and I appreciate the move toward more and more measuring of those outcomes, and I thank the staff for that. Thank you.
Okay. That's the end of our agenda.
That concludes the regular meeting. We'll move next door.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item is adjournment.
That concludes the regular special strategic priorities meeting, and we'll move next door for the close.
For the close.